Good evening or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or welcome to a bit of a quick note here, a quick analysis of the Umber Wasp of 1.3 patch notes, which just hit out today, or well, a bit later today as I was recording this video. So, bit of a nice patch here coming out, lots of improvements, some additions as well, and a bunch of balance changes. I'll be going through them and provide a bit of analysis and my own thoughts to things here. And of course, keep in mind there'll be some extra balance changes at the end of the month, plus whoever knows, some hot fixes. And of course, we also got the big December patch here at the start of December with some extra content coming in there. But for now, let's have a look here. Overall, we got a new 44 map, which looks really, really nice, by the way. Definitely seen some highlights of that. Looks really good. Pekino gets reworked here. So that should be very nice there. Console change of territory and accessibility and all sorts of stuff there. Also becomes a night map. They don't mention there, but that's basically what updated atmosphere mean. It's night. Quick match that's there. Some improvements here. Pathfinding will receive a notable improvements here as well. Including the infantry as well, which definitely had some slight kinks in their behavior. So this will also, I think, be significant in making the game overall, perform more smoothly and less frustratingly. So that's big here. And for team games, changes to pings. They now have sort of more, proper sort of things to look at. And you can't spam pings anymore, which definitely I know was an issue, particularly with passive-aggressive players that just start pinging you because, didn't like them pinging. So that's a thing of the past as well there. Some minor changes to the positioning of, machine gun placements and whatnot on the map by the bases, so they can't cut points. Toronto coastline's getting rebalanced a bit there. Very nice. Not as big, of course, as Pekino, but still nice. And similarly, Twin Beaches is getting some improvements well here visually as well. And apparently, that place I call Fuel Hill is now apparently Mount Bacon. Good to know. And similarly, a bunch of the other maps, mostly the 3.44 maps, are also receiving some improvements, though so is Campbell's Convoy. Tactical map, also getting some improvements. Personally, I never make use of it, but it's nice. It's nice. For those who use it, it's a great improvement. But again, personally, never did, so can't really say a lot about it. But for those who made use of it, I imagine that's going to be huge. Also, some small new cosmetics here. Those are basically ones that can be bought for merit. So that's nice as well. There's some apparently already appeared here. The sea blues here, I think, stuff like that. So, very nice stuff here. And, of course, we go on to the meat. I think most of the watching the channel here, of course, be interested in, which are the general balance changes. Well, the balance change in general. There's some changes to medium armor in general. But, basically all losing some accuracy at long range. So, that'll definitely, just making, A-moving and sniping at max range, a lot of these much more difficult. Crusaders, in particular, should also just be able to be a lot less effective, since they typically had a high rate of fire, which combined them with high accuracy definitely make them very, very lethal. So this sort of change here should definitely be a big help then, making Crusader spam a little less effective. And similar should also help, for example, making Matilda perhaps less of just a murder machine as well in that sense. So some improvements here, I think that, go a long way then, making infantry less splatterable in certain situations. And also just make max range, just, shoot and scoot tactics a bit tough as well there. So that should, I think, help improve balancing. Anti-aircraft guns have also been improved, so that's big help there. They've included also, setting up the various airstrike abilities. So from lowest, basically strafing runs to, the heavy bomb runs, basically can take the most hits. So sort of got an idea there. And Loiter's sort of in between. Apparently, they're currently bugged and can be a bit shot down fast and easier, though I think most players are not going to be concerned about Loiters going down easier, except for the ones who keep using them. But I think for the rest, that's probably one of those nicer bugs. But yeah. So generally, you get a certain amount of anti-aircraft guns, you can just, deal with most air support stuff. Basically, a pair of them should generally keep you covered against most things by all appearances. So that's something that's going as well. They've against an opponent with a lot of aircraft. You get 2 AA guns, and, they don't have a lot of aircraft. So I think that's a nice improvement as well here. Very nice to see that again. There's some general improvements here. Mortars are getting a bit more standardized, it would appear. Basically, only got to be performing like the US mortar, which was easily the best. So them performing better like that, I think is going to be nice there. Some changes to veterancy as well here. Basically, a bunch of units, veterancy up a bit faster. So that should help make some of them a bit more viable. And snipers become just a bit more survivable, at least in terms of being less immediate spotted, having a bit better range. Moving on to the faction changes. First, get the USF. There's definitely a lot of changes in there. Jeeps are getting slightly toned down. They're less accurate on the move, and they have like slightly less armor, so they can't just drive straight up at everything, which was basically an issue in particular with armor. You just rushed them out, and you drove them straight at the enemy. This should make this a bit tougher to achieve. Assault engineers actually get veterans up faster. That's a small improvement there. Bazooka teams get a bit cheaper to build, not to reinforce, but they do also veterans you up a bit faster. So those are some general improvements there. Nothing too remarkable, but, should make them perhaps a bit more attractive. I don't think it's going to be enough, but, it's a step in the right direction. Engineers, similarly, slightly faster veterancy gains, except at mid-range, I guess, but, early on they're faster, but later on they become a bit harder there. It's still, I guess, that makes them more attractive. Half-track there can basically make stuff there now also recharge faster than abilities. Greyhound gets a bit of some changes there. It actually becomes more accurate, which is one of the issues that are a bit hit and miss in a sense. But on the other hand, it just can't one-shot entire squads, which was basically the issue before. It could just draw it and then shoot an entire squad. I had cases where lost a full health MD42 team to single shot, or you've seen clips of people just in an entire Grenadier squad one-shotted by the Greyhound. They should fix this, but also just make the Greyhound perform a bit more smoothly. Scott definitely was overperforming. Basically, less immediate splash damage, and of course, actually has a cost now. Still good, just, not draw and just melt the German army like it's the Ark of the Covenant. Moving on to the Chaffee, that's a bit some interesting changes there. Basically, they're buffing, in a sense, the APCR rounds, but also increasing the reload time. So that's a bit of an interesting one there. I think they're just trying to make Chaffee spam a bit less potent, because basically could just shut down Panzerfeast. This should make it less good against Panzerfeast, making the DAC late game a bit more viable. But at the same time, the APCR round should still be a bit more attractive that way. And of course, there's going to be some other buffs they didn't mention here to other units with similar abilities from that upgrade. That should, again, I think, make it a bit more attractive. Paratroopers basically get better grenades. Riflemen, big nerf. Big, of course, important change here. Not big in a sense, but basically they just can't use port on them while moving as fast. Basically, that was actually the one thing that made port on them particularly nuts, is compared to every other ability like that, they could actually move at full speed. The tactical assault and the assault grenadiers, or the shock assault and the Starstorm all lowered the speed, but port on them just didn't. Now it does. Also, they lowered the penetration, which, gonna make them slightly less good against the vehicles, but also crucially means some of the elite infantry will be a bit tough as well there. So Starstorm and Guastatoria, for example, might actually be a bit more of a counter now to them, because again, they're not going to just be able to just hose them down. So bit of an improvement there as well. Scouts, mostly a bit of a buff there, slightly cheaper. And of course, the utility package also a bit cheaper. Veterancy also actually improved this. It's just basically a buff for the scouts who just really didn't see a lot of usage. You had the one that's starting, you just never bothered with more. This is an improvement. Maybe a bit much, we'll have to see. But it's an improvement. Seek and Destroy, which was part of the Armored Battle Group, I believe. Basically, a bit of a buff there. It does lose some of the bonuses, but it gets more accurate. So, yeah, that's nice. White Phosphorus on the Shermans. Slight nerf. EC8 gets a bit more nerfed. Basically, just arouse the Veterans 1 Engineer squad. Has less penetration, so it doesn't just straight up melt Tigers and Panthers as easily. Also a bit more command points, and they've also slightly increased the cost. So just a little less spammable and a little less just an all-around counter to everything German armored. But should still be good, I think, in general. Should still be good, particularly when you factor in the other sort of things that armor has, which still I think makes Armored Battle Group very good. And we got the Whispering actually getting a buff, basically a big change. There's some of that stuff. The Precision Rocket now has long range, and there's a lot more range now. In fact, twice the range. So, yeah, also more rockets. That's a pretty big change there to that one. Strafing runs slightly nerfed. And some slight changes which all appears to be, well, basically a bit nerfed as well to their support center, which is a bit interesting. It didn't feel overused, but maybe in the team games. Munition surplus from the Imp support center gets nerfed, and the mechanized support center, so you actually get some changes there and some buffs to the various canister rounds, and of course the APCR rounds, making that overall a bit more attractive. Canister rounds just didn't see any usage before because it just wasn't very good. But now when you're being able to like just eviscerate infantry out in the open, I think it should see a lot more, more usage. I don't know if it's going to see a lot more usage. I mean, they didn't really, I think, touch heavily on the Infant Support Center, so I think there's a chance that Infant Support Center will still be more popular and still see more usage over Mechanized Support Center, for example, but there's at least now more reason to consider the Mechanized Support Center than before. And I think, some of these changes are probably going to be slept upon, but I think someone's going to catch on and go, hang on, these canister rounds now are bloody great. But again, I do suspect it will take a bit of a while there before people catch on to this, as, it tends to do in a lot of cases. Paratroopers, slightly faster upgrade time. Overall for the USF, some nerfs, some buffs, some things like, make various other battle, support centers a bit more viable. I think, real good. I think, on average, keep the USF roughly around the same power level. In some cases, actually improve it. But at the same time, keep the most dominant, US heavy armored strategy a little less, just straightforward and efficient. That said, it doesn't necessarily just make spamming riflemen overall less efficient. In a sense, it just makes blobbing up a port on them less efficient. We'll have to see how that goes. But in general, I think these are all good changes. Again, some are going to just look, but there's so many nerfs, and of course ignore the buffs because there are buffs, but also ignore the fact, the stuff that got nerfed was typically also some of the most overperforming stuff. But anyways, moving on to the Wehrmacht, which is pretty much just getting all buffs. Flak 30 is getting buffed there, slightly faster, slightly tougher, slightly increased penetration, and slightly faster veterancy gains. I do think this one is unnecessary, but I also understand they buffed it because, well, they have to work on data, and of course, the Flak 30 really only caught on recently. Like, we're talking like the last few weeks here, and, they probably just basically missed the Flak 30 catching on because of that, because before that, no one really used the Flak 30, so I kind of understand this, but I also do think this is a buff they probably need to revert at the end of the month. Basically unnecessary now. But again, I understand how it happened. Stummel getting buffed here, basically. Very nice to see that. Overall faster rate of fire and slightly cheaper upgrade, too. Liking that a lot. I'm a big fan of the Stummel, and seeing it slightly better like this, I think it's great. Bigger buff, and this might actually be, I think, one of the biggest buffs of the Wehrmacht, is the armored side skirts. Costs more, but actually provides health now instead of extra armor on the sides, which I think is a big change. I mean, that's really big. Makes your Stugs, your Wirbelwinds, your Panzerforce, and your Sturmpanzers just tougher. This is big. This is a big change. I think a big upgrade that definitely helps, just make armored skirts an actual thing you'll go for the actual upgrade, rather than because it just looks cool, which is what you pretty much did, before. You just went for it because it looked really neat, but not because it provided any actual, worthwhile improvement. So, big buff here. Big buff. Blitzkrieg gets buffed. That's actually pretty big as well. I already liked it, honestly. I don't think it needed a buff, but at the same time, they probably, again, go by the whole data thing, and just most people never used it except me, and they probably have like this, particularly tab, they just go ignore Dane's usage of the ability. Command tank gets a bit of a buff there. Definitely needed a bit of that. I mean, obviously his abilities were good, but the tank itself was just kind of rubbish. So, I don't know. Maybe a bit too good, maybe not. Wirbelwind getting buffed, though basically getting a bit cheaper, which I think was necessary. It was basically more expensive than a Stug, while performing a lot less than that. Also, reload being decreased, I think it's going to be big there. Tactical advance replaced with white phosphorus, which, can basically be used to suppress units and slightly mess with other vehicles, I think makes sense. Overall, nice buff for that, just making it just, again, go-to unit, for example, with Luftwaffe. Jaeger Light Infantry. Yeah. Nice buffs there. I don't know. Again, we'll have to see. Might need to be slightly undone there. Kettenkrad getting communication cables changed. Now provides, again, faster capture speed further, and actually, allows the points grab to support sight. But on the other hand, no extra resources. It also gets just faster. So a little buff to the Kettenkrad. Again, probably one of those cases where, you just look at the older data before they got new ones, and, again, I think highlights just the way that Code 3 still is a game in terms of the metagame is evolving. There's a lot of things happening there. In particular with the Wehrmacht, I think there's just been a lot of experimentation and, exploration of the game in the last couple of weeks here. So some of these buffs may appear unnecessary now, but, if you sort of looked at, just, data a few weeks ago, you'd probably go, yeah, this could probably do some buffs. But now it's yeah, probably not. Mechanized Artilleried basically loses its, map hack ability. Makes sense. That video was definitely a bit too good to have on that, so just makes a bit more support that way. White phosphorus for the needle lever fires 1 extra rocket. Needle lever just, at least for me personally, didn't use it. Every time I use it, it's sort of disappointment. And this isn't really going to fix that. I know it's used in team games, and even there they go for multiple, so maybe. Pioneers, faster veterancy. That's nice. Makes them definitely a bit veteran faster. Problem is, like, you never really saw a Pioneer squad go beyond Veterancy 1. It just never happened. Now you might like to see Veterancy 2 and Veterancy 3 Pioneers. And Panthers also going to change there. Tactical Advance replaced with Tank Hunter. Interesting. I don't know. That one's a bit okay. I like Tactical Advance, but I guess they want to, like, give a bit more variety in terms of abilities, similar to how they changed on the Been. So, yeah, gives the Panther 4 a bit more on his own there. And now the White Phosphorus works properly on the Stormtrooper. Off for the Brits, basically the Howitzer is a bit nerfed. They was basically, like, too good in team games in some way. One's, like, difficult to deal with, but also, pretty cheapish. So, that's nice. Dingo gains shared experience, so it actually can, like, scale a bit better. Truck gets a small buff. Commandos gets a small buff as well with the grenades. The Crusader gets a bit nerfed there, so it doesn't just, like, melt infantry, which was definitely a bit of an issue there. Understandable. Recce sections, small nerf as well. Like withdrawing vehicle refit, they just buff. And they also toned down the Steward a bit there because, it was really, really, really good and obviously needed to be toned down. So, good changes here. Doesn't ruin it, but, just makes it less straightforward. And over to the DAC, which definitely gets the, I think, main set of changes here. Definitely the big part here, and they actually get some pretty impressive ones. The 250 half-tech for starters gets cheaper, and more armor, and veterans up faster here. Big changes there, because the 250 half-tech barely ever saw veterans run before. Now man actually see veterans 1, 2, and 3 consistently, so these are pretty big changes here. That's going to make the 250 a lot more attractive. Advanced Optics is a new upgrade that's added in there. Basically increases line of sight while moving and while stationary. Very nice there. The Advanced Repairs ability, which no one ever used, gets cheaper and is now more accessible because everyone just went for the self-repair ability instead. Assault Grenadiers get buffed a bit, just made cheaper. I think that works out nicely. They're basically the cost of Panzer Grenadiers while not having assault rifles. Something had to give. And Besieri get cheaper, but they have a bit more increased cooldown. That said, there's going to be another element, I think, that's going to further make them better here. Bread upgrade, cheaper, but no free light machine guns. On the other hand, it also does more DPS, so I think that's a nice buff there as well. Combat half-track upgrade, further armor, very nice. Combined arms, changed. Should all be an improvement in some regards. So yeah, nice stuff there. And the DAC command tank also gets some improvements here. Nothing huge, but again, should make it more consistent and attractive than it usually is. And I think another big one is actually the grenade package. It's no longer a separate upgrade, but rather something you just get from Fire Support Elements or the Light Support Company. This is big for the Panzer Grenadiers, so suddenly you don't have to expend extra resources to get the grenades. This makes Panzer Grenadier builds alongside the other upgrades. And it changes much more viable and much more attractive. So this is a pretty big buff there to the Panzer Grenadiers, which would really help make the DAC much more attractive as well. Kartschützen, speed buff, nice. Light Support Company with Panzerjägers, they're now there. That said, 250 manpower I do think is too low. I think that's going to be universally agreed upon by anyone at the higher ranks. And I do hope they're going to at least hotfix this. I do think it should be close to 300 manpower. I do think 250 manpower for an anti-tank unit is a bit low. So that definitely, I think, is going to have to, like, rise up. Hopefully they can do it, like, with a hotfix, because I don't think this is, all right at all. Definitely too low. But that said, assuming it's, well costing now, it's like, it's also going to be a buff to the Besieri, because, again, they lack snares. Having access, like, Panzerjägers does also make Besieri builds, by extension, just more attractive. So, plus, of course, the Panzer builds. So this is, like, a really big one, but, again, does need to be more expensive, really. Just, too good. Also, further buffs to the Panzers of the light machine guns. The grenade gets a bit more range now. It doesn't get from the combined arms. Yeah, overall, just, solid stuff here. Secure location. Bit faster to capture. Stug veterans up a bit faster and a bit more range and flying positions. And then also some change to the Italian infantry battle group specifically, with a lot of stuff being made more accessible, just cheaper, because most of it never really saw usage. Guastatori get more armor, which of course combined with the bar nerf should generally make them a bit more attractive, and maybe also make them serve more as a counter to bar spam for either the DAC. And the L640 gets a buff as well. In fact, once you get the Guastatori, you can quickly flip up with the L640 if you want to, or you can go for Radiant Artillery, as you can see there. So, yeah, that's actually a pretty big one. Plus, it gets a penetration buff, meaning it is more able to fight off light vehicle, which is actually an issue with the L640. It was very, very vulnerable to light vehicle play. So, this is actually a very good buff there. And overall, I think good changes there as well to the Italian infantry battle group should make it a lot more attractive than it was before. There's also a bunch of other changes. I think I'll highlight the biggest one here, which is that breach now forces retreats of garrisoned units. So overall, a lot of changes here, of course. Massive changes, big changes. I think some very good changes. Of course, again, I know some people are just going to look at like the sheer number of nerfs and the buffs, then just go, oh, they've ruined everything. I think, again, people are just looking at numbers, or, and shall we say, at a broad perspective, and not looking at the details. And of course, also they will be lightly ignoring all the buffs that yourself are still getting to a lot of their less used stuff here. So that's it. That's it. I do think there's some things that, for example, should be buff like the Flak 30. I do understand why they did as mentioned, and I do think the Panzerjägers need to be more expensive. But beyond that, I do think overall these are some very, very good balance changes. All in all, that I think should lead to a much more healthy metagame. There may be a bit of adjustment time, and there may be a need for some things to be tweaked a bit here. And unfortunately, we haven't really seen any change to the heavy machine gun teams, and particularly the MD42, which unfortunately can still pivot around very fast. That definitely needs to be nerfed. Hopefully, again, we can get that at the end of the month. But, overall, still, I'm liking most of this. There's only like a really few, moments here. But even now, I can sort of see the logic behind it, unlike in Code 2, where a lot of the changes just have me scratching my head and just going, what on earth? Comparatively, I can actually understand the logic, even if I don't agree with it. And a lot of it is just they probably operate a bit on older data, and in some cases, again, the metagame is still evolving, despite what some people say. Again, Flak 30, very good, case in point, didn't see usage a month ago, but the last couple of weeks, it's really been catching on significantly, for example. So those are some of the things there. But overall, good patch. Looking forward to playing it. As a recording, of course, by the time this goes up, it'll probably out to get some matches out with it. So there you go. Hope you like this video. If you did, comment, like, share, subscribe. Get the YouTube algorithm to spread that up, because YouTube has really been not very nice to me algorithm-wise. Definitely seen a bit of a drop in viewers. So, help get it out there. What are your thoughts on the patch? What do you like? What did you not like? All that sort of jazz there. And as always, you can support the Propagandacast besides just liking and commenting by donating or pledging on Patreon. Links are in the description. This is Imperial saying cheers, and see you all another time for another video. Bye, everyone.